When you're starting a nonprofit, what are some of the things you can expect to have to do in the first, second, and third years of growth? That's what I'm going to talk about in this video. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Amber Melanie Smith, and I'm a nonprofit founder and executive director of the nonprofit that I started. I make these videos here on YouTube to help aspiring change makers, whether you're starting a nonprofit or some other kind of social impact project, with tips and strategies to help you do just that. As always, I hope that you find this video helpful. If you do, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. If you are looking for a little bit of extra help and support, I do have some trainings on my website, foundertofulltime.com. One covers the process of starting a nonprofit from your idea phase through doing your formal registration in the United States. And the other training course is all about creating a sustainable fundraising plan for your organization. So go check that out, see if it's for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Now, before I get into what you might expect for years 1, 2, and 3 of your new nonprofit organization's growth, I do want to offer a little bit of a disclaimer. The scenario I'm going to describe is, of course, an example only. Every nonprofit is starting from a different place essentially when they are getting started. You might already have a board of directors in place. You might already have some funds that you've raised for your nonprofit project. You might be starting with absolutely nothing at all. No money, no board of directors, nothing, just an idea and a dream in your heart. So just keep in mind that everyone starts from a different place, and that the example I'm going to be giving is the scenario in which you would be starting with basically nothing. Okay, so all that said, let's get into it. I'm going to break this down by year and basically share some of the things that you would be doing each year of the 3 years that I cited before, what you might be expecting to do as part of your organization's launch and growth. Let's start with year number 1, and the theme of year number 1 is validate and plan. This year should be the year where you are doing a heavy amount of research and relationship building and making connections with experts in the field or the issue area that you plan to tackle with your nonprofit. So the first thing you want to do before you file any kind of paperwork is heavily research the community problem or the community issue that your nonprofit is basically being formed to tackle or solve, whether that's food insecurity or improving education for youth or whatever your issue might be. As part of this, another step is to scan your environment and figure out what other nonprofits in your community that you plan to serve are tackling the same issue as you, and in what ways. Your goal here should be to understand the landscape of other players in the area, but also try to connect to them and meet with them if possible to kind of learn more about what they've been working on, their approach, and whether there are areas that your new organization could complement or support in the issue that they're already covering. Once you've done a bit of research and talked to experts and other nonprofit leaders tackling the same issue that you hope to tackle in your area, what's next is starting to formulate some ideas around how you're going to achieve your goals as an organization. Specifically here, I'm talking about your programming. So what are the day-to-day or month-to-month activities that you're going to be doing in order to work towards your ultimate goal of tackling or solving X community problem? So how will you tackle food insecurity? How will you help people experiencing homelessness, etc.? This is also known as a theory of change, which is basically a step-by-step explanation of how your programs will lead to the outcomes you desire for your mission. And I'll probably get into this in some future video, but basically you want to start with the end outcome. You want to think about, okay, what am I hoping for here? If I achieve my nonprofit goals, that will mean that in my community there's no more youth hunger, or every high schooler graduates from high school, or some end outcome like that. And then you work it backwards to think through what are the steps and activities you need to undertake in order to achieve that outcome in your community. As part of year one, you ideally also want to do a small scale pilot test of some of the programming that you are thinking through as part of your theory of change. This is an important step because you want to be able to test out what will work and what won't work with your program. And you also want to be able to get at least some preliminary feedback from your community and the people that you'll be serving to make sure that your program is effective in meeting their needs rather than inadvertently creating harm. So at this point, you've done your research, you've developed your theory of change and some ideas around the programming that you plan to offer. Now you can kind of come back and start to think through a proper mission statement for your organization. I do have another video all about how to craft an effective mission statement, so be sure to check that out when you get to this step. Simultaneous to all of this going on, or perhaps even at this stage, you're going to be starting to recruit your board of directors. Now, of course, in the United States, you need to have some board members in order to officially file as a nonprofit organization. So depending on where you live, be sure to look up the unique rules to your region. As you get farther into year one, you're going to be wanting to work with that board of directors that you've recruited to really get into a bit more detail about your plans for the organization in the form of writing a business plan. And this business plan is going to write out in, like I said, greater detail the outline of your program concept, but it's also going to cover other aspects of what you need to do to be a success, like how are you going to market your programs and how are you going to raise the funds needed to cover the costs of your programs and the general day-to-day operations of your organization. If you're wondering how to create a nonprofit business plan, you guessed it, I have another video about that too. Be sure to check that out. It will talk you through the various steps and components that need to go in such a plan. At this point, you are gearing up to file your official registration paperwork. So in the United States, this will cost a little bit of money, usually anywhere from a couple hundred to a couple thousand, depending on if you use legal services or the complexity of the application you plan to submit. But you will need to raise those funds before you can finish filing, and then it will be a couple months probably to hear back from the IRS, again if you're in the United States, before you become an official 501c3 public charity nonprofit organization. Okay, so that's a brief, broad overview of what you might expect to be tackling in year one of the organization. Now let's talk about year two of the organization. And the theme of year two is building systems and supporters. So when I say that, I'm talking about three things. I'm talking about getting some impacts under your belt as an organization. So previously, hopefully you tested out your program ideas. At this point, now you're starting to roll out your programs a little bit more consistently or on a larger scale. So you want to be getting those programs out there, running them effectively, and then tracking your impacts so that you have essentially something to show your public and your supporters that you are operating as an effective organization working towards your mission. So getting impacts under your belt and then building out systems to make sure that you are a strong and resilient nonprofit organization. So some of the infrastructure and policy development that you need to make sure that you've got all of your ducks in a row there. And then building your base of supporters. So reaching out to the community, gathering people who are interested in your cause and engaging them throughout the year. And again, creating more systems to keep those supporters and followers engaged throughout the year so that they will hopefully one day when you need them to donate or volunteer to support your cause. So let's go back to that first part of what I said and talk a little bit more in detail. When you are continuing to roll out your programs, an important thing that you need to do is make sure you have feedback systems in place so that you can be making sure that your programming is having the desired impact and effect on the community. So you might establish surveys that you ask of the people that you are serving, maybe once a quarter or whatever is appropriate for you. You want to be tracking things like how many people or animals or that you're serving, or if you're doing an environmental organization, whatever pounds of litter, trees planted, etc. So you want to be tracking those outputs as much as possible, and then you want to be collecting anecdotes and stories from the people and the communities that you're serving that are testimonials about the work your organization is doing. This is really critical at this early stage in your growth because it provides evidence to current and future funders and supporters that you're doing a good job and deserve funding. Now, a little bit more about setting up systems and infrastructure for your organization. A strong nonprofit needs a lot of infrastructure to run smoothly and efficiently, and especially to be resilient in the face of a disaster or emergency. So just some of the things you're going to need to have in place are you need to be using healthy accounting practices. You need to have policies written for your organization, like a conflict of interest policy, an IT or cybersecurity policy, especially in today's age. You need policies in place that will basically guide your organization's team members on how to behave and protect your organization if a problem comes up. Other things you want to be developing at this point, other processes include how you recruit volunteers, how you train and onboard volunteers, how you appreciate and recognize your volunteers. Same for donors. You want to have donor management systems in place. You might consider a CRM software to track all of your donor relationships and making sure that you are appreciating them, thanking them when they donate, and that you have all of those systems written out so that the people on your team know how to function and how to take care of those activities for your organization's operations. The third part of what I mentioned here was about growing your supporter base. So this is all about community outreach. If you are doing an amazing job but nobody knows about your cause, well, that's very sad. And you need people to know about your cause so that they can potentially donate and volunteer and spread the word and support your organization in all of these wonderful ways. So as you're doing community outreach, which could include things like hosting events or doing public speaking engagements or sending out newsletters or speaking at local civic clubs, etc., you want to be giving people an opportunity to opt in to your mailing list or to stay in contact with them in some way. And then you want to keep them engaged throughout the year by saying hello to them now and then, inviting them to things coming up, sharing news, sharing impact throughout the year, etc. In year 2, or perhaps even earlier, you're also going to be inviting some of these supporters to contribute financially to your organization and growing your revenue sources and your funding streams here. If you've done a really good job at this and you are bringing in enough revenue to meet your budget needs for the organization, you might also perhaps be in a position where you could consider hiring your first paid staff member for your nonprofit at around this year 2 mark as well. But again, a lot of factors go into hiring paid staff, so every organization is going to be different. Something just that you need to consider and plan in advance for. All right, so years 1 and 2, you're talking about setting up systems and infrastructure and validating your programs and getting great feedback from your community. Year 3 is all about financial sustainability. So by year 3, you should have a lot of wonderful impacts from your programs that you can share with your community and with funders. You also are hopefully bringing in some donations from various sources, your donors, maybe even you've gotten lucky and gotten some grants here and there or corporate sponsors. Year 3 is all about deepening and scaling those programs and your financial systems so that you can be bringing in more money to grow your impact as an organization. So what you do in year 3 is you take all of your wonderful impacts and the stories that you've been collecting and hopefully some lovely photography and imagery as well. You put together marketing materials all about the great work your organization is doing, and you start to do some outreach to some additional types of funders saying, look at all we've been able to accomplish on our budget so far. wouldn't you like to make a contribution so we can expand this awesome work? At this stage, you should also be really cleaning up your fundraising strategies. And what I mean by that is that there are many ways nonprofits can bring in revenue. You can bring in revenue through donations, through grants, through sponsorships, through earned income, lots of different ways, despite, the common perception is that nonprofits mostly live off of donations and grants, but there are so many other ways you can bring in money as a nonprofit. So by year 3, you should really know which strategy for bringing in money is working the best for your organization and starting to invest more in those specific strategies that are working really well. And also how you can make getting those funds from those sources even more efficient. Let's say you've identified that grants are working out really well for your organization. Well, you might work on processes that make applying for grants even faster in year 3, whether that's developing grant templates or having a more comprehensive database of potential grant funders, whatever you would do to deepen those potential funding sources and make that process of getting those funds faster. If you already made an investment in year 2 for paid staff, then by year 3, you can possibly start to look at if you need to bring on additional staff support to help that lone staff person. I personally have found that when you bring on paid staff, someone or multiple people who can actually devote full time to the work, that your organization grows a lot faster. And so you might see some exponential growth from the time you hire your first paid staff member to the next and the next. There is just so much to do when you start a nonprofit, and what I've described just now is what I would personally advise a nonprofit starting from absolute scratch. And as I mentioned before, every organization is starting from a slightly different point when they are getting started with their first year. So I hope that what I've shared at least offers a glimpse into what it could be like for the first couple of years as a completely brand new nonprofit startup. I'd love to hear from you at this point. Are you starting a nonprofit? What part of the process are you in? What year are you in? Where are you in these phases? Like, what are you working on right now? Share in the comments below. I'm always fascinated to hear how people approach their nonprofit startup adventure. And as I mentioned before, if you are starting a nonprofit and need a little extra training and knowledge, check out my website, foundertofulltime.com. Especially my Idea to Official course would be a good fit for someone just starting out from scratch. I also have a free monthly newsletter that I send out for change makers and nonprofit leaders. So the link to subscribe to that is also in the description below, and you can opt out anytime. But if that's something you are interested in receiving, I hope that you check that out. One more thing, if you are on Facebook, I have a group called Change the World or Bust. We've got a couple thousand folks in there from all around the world who are trying to make a difference, and we're having some great conversations. So come on by and check out that group, and I hope to see you there. That is all I have for you today, my friends. I hope to see you next time, and have a great rest of your week. Bye.